Welcome back to the Fear and Beer podcast,
where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies, and just a little bit of beer.
So kill the lights, grab a cold one, and join us as we dive into this mad world we love.
I'm Nick.
I'm Seamus.
And I'm Jamie.
Like scary movies.
Uh-huh.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You miss me.
Aren't you drinking?
I never drink. Why?
And as a reminder to all listening, if you want to help us to continue growing as a podcast, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on whichever streaming platform you use.
To stay up to date with us and all of our episodes, be sure to follow all of our socials. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Fear and Beer Pod.
Feel free to reach out to us. We love to interact with you all.
March Madness brackets week 2, and this is the perfect reason as to why we added Jamie, because Seamus is halfway across the country right now, sipping those pints over in Ireland. So tonight is going to be myself and Jamie.
Hello.
So we are going to be discussing these IPs that we've never gotten before and briefly touch on probably just like the overall feel of what the house would end up being. We're not going to go specific scene by scene because we discovered last week how in-depth that ended up getting, and it got a little out of hand. So we are going to breeze through some of this bracket. Now, I do have some of Seamus's proxy votes, so that way we can split tiebreakers. I have his final four, I have his winner, and up until that point, myself and Jamie will dictate which ones move forward. But I have his votes, so you can still get his peace of mind at some of these, and I'm sure if you've been listening, you know which ones he is going to be pulling for in this bracket. But before we get into that main topic, let's touch on our beers. Now this one, the can art looks more horror related than the name. This is Your Weird Uncle's Bad Ideas. This is from Illuminated Brewworks. They are out of Chicago, and again, this was picked up at the Half Barrel Project. This is a Imperial Double IPA, so it's dry hopped, double 8%, a lot of Raku, Mosaic, Amarillo, and it says that there's a strawberry and marshmallow flavor. So this seems like it's all over the board. So Jamie, what are you drinking tonight?
So I am drinking Tiny S's from Prairie Artisan Ales. It's a sour ale with Skittles, and it's brewed from the Prairie Artisan over in Krebs, Oklahoma. It's a 5.9% ABV with 0 IBU. So let's see how this one tastes.
Yeah, these the can art definitely got me, and then when I saw what this beer actually was, I was like, oh, this sounds interesting to say the least. It's definitely got that, it's not like a full haze, but it's definitely got a little bit on there.
Yeah, my can art's got, like, I forgot to mention it, but it's got, like, a little chemistry set kind of deal going on with a little, like, paint machine thing. Kind of cool looking, but, yeah.
So let's dive into this bracket. So again, same format as previously. 12 IPs, 4 of which have a bye. And we are going to go one by one, matchup by matchup, and dive into these. So the first matchup would be 1984's Gremlins. So this one, I feel like, has been talked about and tossed around a lot throughout the last couple speculation seasons. But we paired that up with 1987's The Lost Boys. Ooh. So these are two completely different houses. Gremlins would be much in that realm of, you say comedy, but there's really not much comedy to it. Definitely in that Ghostbusters feel.
Like the Funhouse.
Yeah. It would play on the sensory, because again, it's around the Christmas time, so it would almost be like holiday themed-ish. Whereas The Lost Boys, I almost picture it like that first scene, almost like Us. Yes. Where you're walking into that like boardwalky area.
That's exactly how I would picture it too.
With The Lost Boys, I don't see as many scenes from the movie necessarily working out. I mean, maybe that upstairs in the house scene, like when we first discover that, he's been turned.
Yeah.
This is definitely more up your alley. So what do you?
I have a lot for it.
So why don't you just jump in? I know you're you're ready to rip on the Lost Boys.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Lost Boys, and for years I have just thought that this would be a good house. Exactly how Nick said, I feel like you could walk in kind of like to the boardwalk scene, like how us did when you're walking through the boardwalk as well. But I just feel like there's so many different aspects of the film that you could put in the house. I mean, going room by room wise, or room by room wise, but when they get to the grandfather's house and stuff like that, how it's all kind of crazy looking on the inside with all the taxidermy animals and whatnot, like the wooded like cabin feel. I feel like that could be a cool room if you walk through that. You could have the underground hotel that the Lost Boys stayed at with all the different little tropes and stuff that they had in there. You could do a bathroom scene when the one Lost Boy gets put in the bathtub and in the bathtub of holy water and does that. You could, I just feel like there's, and I just watched this movie the other day, I should know more stuff off the top of my head, but I just feel like there's a lot that could be done with it. So obviously I'm gonna be gunning for this one, but Gremlins 2, I know this is terrible to say, but I haven't watched Gremlins through the whole thing in a really long time, so I definitely have to go back and watch it. But again, this would probably be more one of those like fun houses, but not as scary, kind of like you said with like the Ghostbusters, or like how they did with like Beetlejuice and stuff like that, which I still liked both of them. It's still nice to have that break from like something different other than jump scares and whatnot popping out and stuff like that. So
it's also tough when, I mean, this house would be so heavy on the animatronics.
Right.
You know, you're not going to have little people dressed up as gremlins.
Exactly.
We do need, if we do the Lost Boys, you do need the Tim Capello scene. You need the sax man there.
I was going to say, that's another one, yeah.
You need the sax man.
Yeah.
This is tough, because I feel like Gremlins, for me, fits my personal taste in houses, where it's holiday, temperature, fun, goofy comedy, but I think the Lost Boys has better characters to work with. I think better scenery. Yeah. I think you could have a more diverse set.
You could do the comic book store on the boardwalk, the Frog Brothers comic book shop would be fun to walk through, something like that.
Yeah, so let's see. I'm ready. Are you ready to well, I think before we even talked about these, you were ready to place your ready to place your vote. So well, say what you're saying. So we can play a fun game of what would Seamus say, because
that's a toughie, honestly.
His
I
final,
I feel like I would know what he would go with, but I don't know.
He gave me his final four, and neither of these are there.
Really?
For his final four.
Yeah.
So when it comes to Gremlins versus Lost Boys, I want to say Seamus would vote Lost Boys.
I think he would, too.
I think he would vote Lost Boys. Myself, surprisingly, I'm actually going to go Lost Boys as well.
Really? I know you like Gremlins. I mean, you don't love it like that, but I know you would enjoy something like that, because you like those, like you said, like the holiday-themed houses where they can work with different sensory and stuff like that. But yeah, Lost Boys is the vote for me as well.
All right, so Lost Boys is moving on. So then, do you want to go through the next little matchup we got, which is another fun pairing?
I was going to say, this is a good one. So 13 Ghosts and Terrifier are next two. So 13 Ghosts, I grew up with this movie. I grew up loving it. I think that I know so many people have wanted this for the past however many years and stuff like that. So this could definitely be done as a very cool house too. I mean, ideally, I would love for it to be like how it was in the movie, a big glass house messing with like the different lights and the different like motor works that are built inside the house, and you could have all the different ghosts and stuff like that. But on the other hand, Terrifier, love it as well. Definitely would be much more gory, intense, I guess, in that sense. Not as much characters to work with, and it's kind of tough to think about seating and how they would do for different rooms and stuff like that, just because the first one essentially does take place mostly just in the warehouse that he's in. So what were you thinking about that one?
Yeah, this is tough. I love 13 Ghosts. I think the movie as a whole like lends itself perfectly to a house. You could dedicate a room or two to each of the the different settings. They have the whole basement setting. They have the whole foyer. And there's just a lot in there. Now Terrifier, I think, has a much better villain That would definitely be the gore,
Mm-hmm.
more iconic. And I think this is a house that could take liberties off of the movie and not necessarily add extra scenes, but it could expand on some settings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you could have the little like pizza place setting.
Yeah, I didn't even think
You could
about
do
that. That's true too.
like just the party scene where he's
Mm-hmm.
not even there. Like the two girls are at the parties beforehand. I might be mixing up Terrifier 2 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Terrifier 2, I know there's a big party scene, but I
Yes.
know in the beginning the two friends are
I think they're coming from
from a party
Yes.
and their tires busted, stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that, and they go into the like abandoned warehouse while they're fixing it up, and there's that other maintenance guy that's working there.
Yeah.
So you could do that, you know, that maintenance area.
Mm-hmm.
You could do the little pizza stand. You could do 2 or 3 rooms in like that torture sequence.
Right.
Now, I think I just really like when it's tough for me to say. I like the main villains of like houses. I like having like this is art versus like same thing where like Haunting a Hill House. I loved the house, but it was just kind of like there was a lot of forces there.
Yeah.
So there was no like definitive
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote bad guy
Right.
per se.
Mm-hmm.
I think art's just so iconic. Now, I know we'd have to dull back a lot of the nonsense that's in this movie. There's a absurd amount of like grotesque
Yeah.
actions and violence.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we have the Blood Angel that's like in every single house, like it's in a house every year.
Yeah, so I was gonna say that wouldn't be a problem, I don't think.
So, you know, you'd obviously have to scale back on the nudity aspect
Right.
and that whole subject. But I mean, I don't know if this question is which one do I prefer versus which one is more doable, because
That's true.
I think the one I want is not as doable. So yeah, I don't know, and I know which one Seamus would pick because this one's proxied in as well. So are you ready to vote? You want to think on these a little bit more at all, or
I think I'm ready to vote. I can vote.
all right, which one are you aiming towards?
As much as I love Terrifier, and I know how you said it's got the better villain line and it follows that, but I would love to see 13 Ghosts. I think it would be really fun. I think they could do, like you said, a lot with the different ghosts, and even though obviously the house wouldn't be as big as the 13 Ghosts that they have and stuff like that, but they could definitely do like little mashup rooms and whatnot, and I feel like there's just a lot more that they could use. Only saying this from the aspect of what I think would be able to translate better in a house, but I do love Terrifier, and it would be absolutely iconic to have art there.
Yeah,
But-
so I'll put the pressure on myself because Seamus had proxied in Terrifier
Did he?
very
That
far
surprises
into
me
his
too.
bracket.
Huh.
So, with that being said, I guess I have to decide now. What would you know what? I think in order to not make it completely boring,
Mm-hmm.
I will have to also go 13 Ghosts.
Yeah.
I would prefer Art the Clown,
Mm-hmm.
but I do feel there is a repetition factor there. Maybe if it was
It would be a lot of
Terrifier
arts.
2,
Mm-hmm.
there's Terrifier 2 has a lot more
You
settings.
could use the little girl too.
You could do the girl, you could do the little whatever cafe, the clown cafe.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot more there in Terrifier 2 versus
That's what I
Terrifier
was thinking
1.
too, but I didn't want to mention that because we picked the original.
Yeah,
so
I think if it was Terrifier 2, it would have had more of a chance. But
Yeah.
13 Ghosts, I think, is... if it's been a while since you've seen it, go back and watch it, because it lends itself perfectly to a house.
It does.
It lended itself perfectly if it were to be a COVID house year, because everything was like behind screens and everything like that.
Yeah.
So it could have
That's true too.
easily fit right in there. So, all right, so 13 Ghosts is moving along, and then we'll have to kind of struggle a little bit to figure out what Seamus's picks are now that
Right.
Terrifier is off the board.
Mm-hmm.
So, next up, this is a completely, like, random matchup. So, we have The Ring from 2002 going against 1979's Alien. So, talk about two iconic creatures.
Never seen Alien.
Oh my god.
I'm not into the Alien movies. I never have
Jimmy would be
been.
so
Jimmy would have a
disappointed.
fit.
So, needed a sip of beer for this one. These are two, like, completely Completely different movies. Now, we've seen Alien in the past at AVP, but they haven't done a true, like, Alien movie from the first one. So, let's touch on The Ring a little bit. The Ring is, I think, a little bit tougher to do because you have that main character, you have that villain, but the movie itself is so many different settings. You know, it's a traveling movie. It's 7 days. It's like a mystery almost. They're going to here, to here, to here to find new spots, and there's never really much horror. It's more suspense, and like the horror and the killing factor, and when what's her name, when she finally shows on up, Samara, it's finally really just towards the end, because the whole movie is leading up to 7 days, and she comes out of the TV in the guy's apartment building or his loft, and that's like kind of the kill with her. So I feel like this could be done as like a very fun, like pretty looking house with a lot of cool scenery. You can have like the horse place, the horse stables, the well. You know, you're on the coastline, but it's difficult.
The red tree or whatever tree it was in the background that they would have that big shot, that like open field.
Yeah. But I feel like it's the main villain's not in it, so it's like tough to like. You can't really throw her in the front of the house and be like, that would get old. But I think the costume design would be really cool. Versus Alien, you know, if we took this place and had it take place completely on the Nostromo, that's a fun thing, because again, you know, it is a suspenseful movie. It kind of builds towards the alien, but we all know that the xenomorphs are there. It would fill the need for that like sci-fi house without being what we've talked about with Invasion. It's not like a schlocky. This is a scary. This is a lot of fog, a lot of strobe lights, very loud noises, gunfire, a lot of like water effects, water tubing, like dripping down from when alien breaks through, everything like that. I think I've talked myself into one. I think looking back, maybe one of these should not have been on the bracket, but I don't know. What do you have for these two?
So, I mean, I do like that. I mean, like I said, I can't say too much because I haven't seen Alien, but I think I either went the year that they had the Alien versus Predator. I'm not sure if I went in the house that year because I was a little bit younger, but I do remember them having it, so I know it could definitely be translated well into one, even though it wasn't a full alien house in itself. Like you said, I feel like it would definitely be much more scarier than how you were saying with Invasion and stuff like that. I do really like The Ring as a movie as a whole, but like you said, seeing it translated into a house I think would be very hard because there isn't too many characters that you could use with it either, kind of like going back with Terrifier and stuff too. But it could, like you said, it could be really nicely set up. The aesthetic would be nice for it more so. So it's a hard one, you know, it's something I've never seen, and trying to picture how it would be taken into a house just from previous things that they've done before, or something that I couldn't really see being in a house, you know.
Yeah, so are you ready to cast your vote? Because I think I am. I'm going with Alien.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
I mean, realistically, I like The Ring. I've always scared the crap
that
out
was
of me
one
ever
of,
since it was terrifying.
I still think it's one of the, and maybe it's because when I saw it, I mean, I was in theaters, so I was 12 when I saw this in theaters.
Yeah, I was probably like, well, definitely not that much younger, but when I got older seeing it, I was probably like 10.
Yeah, so we saw this in theaters, and it was like the most terrifying movie I've ever seen.
So scary in the movie theater.
And it's still, and I don't know if it like is still that scary, or it's one of those things that just like engraved in me at how scared I was back then, that I'm like, do I go back and watch it now, and do I still get scared? A little bit, but yeah. I just remember it being like the most terrifying thing I've ever seen.
It's very unsettling. Like the video in itself, just all the different like creepy shots with like the horses and like the different cut scenes of morbid pictures
a
and
chair
whatnot.
spinning upside down.
Yeah.
Cinema of the unsettling.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. But yeah, it would be, don't get me wrong, it's a great movie. I just don't see how it would play well into a house.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think the character is great, and it like makes for a great 2 rooms, but I think after that you're going to be like
It would be
really
repetitive.
scratching the bottom of it for it. All right, so Seamus also voted for Alien.
I figured he would.
So that's moving along. So
Okay.
do you want to pick up the last bracket of the first round?
Yeah, so for our next bracket, we have the Addams Family, and we have Halloween 3 Season
Ooh.
of the Witch, one of Nick's favorites, and one of my not-so-favorites, actually. I know, very controversial, but... So, with this, I haven't seen the original Addams Family in a long time, but if you have seen the Addams Family, I feel like it's gotten a very big cult following, but as you could say the same for Halloween 3 as well, that one's gotten a big one too. I know it's been in the talks that a lot of people would like to see Halloween 3, don't know if it would ever happen and kind of stuff like that, but I've never really heard, I thought the Addams Family, when I saw you added this on the bracket, I thought that was a really good one to put, because there's a lot of different characters you could use, the mansion that they live in or whatever, castle kind of thing, I think could be really fun walking through that. I think it would definitely be that like gothic noir style, which I love and I think looks really nice, very aesthetically pleasing. When Halloween 3, I haven't seen this in so long either. When I feel like Halloween 3, you would probably know more about this one to describe it as you could see it in a house, but I guess with the factory and stuff you could add in there, and the bar that Tom Atkins goes to and sits at would be a fun little spot that you can do. I'm trying to think of some of the other scenes. But
Yeah, I mean...
I know Nick's more vexed in this one, so...
Yeah, for Halloween 3, I mean, I think you could do that intro scene where you're first introduced to those, like, robotic hitmen men that get crushed by the car. You could do the motel scene where the neighbor of Tom Atkins is blasted in the face and you get like the creepy crawlies coming out of her mouth, so like really cool prosthetic work there. Actually entering the Silver Shamrock scene, you could do a scene where the kid is, in front of the TV with the face melting with the mask.
That's what I was picturing.
I think there's a lot. Now, is there like an excessive amount? No, probably not. You could probably get like 8 to 9 solid rooms out of this, and then another 2 maybe segue areas, which is fine. Some houses are like that. I do think the Addams Family is a unique like pick.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the Beetlejuice. Like
Right.
I feel like you'd enter into the mansion through the side and you could hear the dun 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 dun, or it just something stupid like that. Now, I haven't seen this movie in forever. It was 91, I think.
I was going to say I haven't.
The original one. That's the one that I was thinking of, like with Christopher Lloyd as Fester. That's the 91 one.
Gotcha.
So that's like
the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, so that one's just the old school thing. As far as like what could come, you could almost do like you give each one of the characters a room.
Their own little.
And because there's so many of them with Morticia and Gomez, Wednesday, you could have them all kind of do their own little thing, and it would definitely be more of like the comedy style thing.
Yeah.
So that one is a little bit trickier. I think there's a lot to work with Addams Family, but pairing it up against Season of the Witch isn't going to ever really do it some favors.
Not really, yeah.
So are you ready to vote on that?
Yeah. So I mean, I think I know what we're going with for your pick. But
Yeah, I think so too.
That's, I'm gonna have to stick with my gut. As much as I'm not a huge fan of the Addams Family, personally, I think it would be cool to be translated into a house. And I'm going to probably be the odd duck out on this one, but I'm going to have to go with the Addams Family.
So no surprise, I'm going to pick Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
Yeah.
And Seamus has also proxied in Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
Which I also figured.
So not anything super surprising there. So let's move on up to this other portion of our bracket now, where we are introducing the first IPs that had buys going against the winners from the previous round.
Yeah.
So up top we have It, which we have talked about fairly recently.
Yeah.
The possibility of this coming, the 2017 remake in particular.
That would be big. It would be huge.
Yeah, that's the one I'm picturing, is the 2017 remake going up against The Lost Boys, which we were just discussing. So I feel like these two are more similar than The Lost Boys previous round.
Yes.
It is closer to to Lost Boys on the horror scale versus Gremlins.
Right.
What I can add to The Lost Boys is now going against it, in comparison, it would now be more of a fun house versus it, which is like very horror.
Yes.
There's a lot of rooms that you could do for it. You know, you could use, again, like we just talked about with the Addams Family, character by character, you could almost do the kids and their fears as rooms. You could do it walking through Pennywise's like origin and how he's getting through everything. You could have the garage scare. You could have the scene where I believe Eddie was, not Eddie, I forget their names.
I think it was Eddie. Was it Eddie?
Maybe outside with the
Are
leper.
you talking about, okay, yeah. I think that might have been it. I haven't seen that in a while either. But
You could have the leper scene. You could have the scene where the house is burning. The kid's family was burnt up. You could do, obviously, the well. You could do his little lair area. You could do the not so scary, very scary, not scary at all door trick. You could do the abandoned house one where he's kind of attacking. I mean, the possibilities are truly endless.
It is.
You could do a cool little balloon scares with when it pops or something like that, which could just be like a digital audio kind of thing. And to have iconic Pennywise actually there, I think pushes it a little bit more for me. Do you have anything else for the Lost Boys that you think would like...
I mean, this is a tough one for the Lost Boys to go against because it has such a big following too, and for years people have wanted it, and it said it's never going to happen and all this kind of stuff, and now in this year's talk that it could be a possibility, that would just be fantastic. It'd be amazing. I'd love it, obviously. I don't want to let my Lost Boys down. What did Seamus? We'll go with Seamus first. If you're ready to vote, we can go with Seamus's vote first.
So Seamus,
I'd like to see what he said.
proxied in it.
Oh, damn it.
So he has it in the final four.
Yeah. What about you?
You can put me on the spot and do your vote.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's tough. Probably would have to go with it, just in the sense, much as I love the Lost Boys, didn't want to let the homies down, but as much as I would like to see it, it definitely would be more the Funhouse compared to it, and just because it and Pennywise himself is so iconic that I would just love to see that being at Horror Nights. It's just something that we've not had before and everyone's wanted for a long time, so. And like you said, there's just so many different options and rooms and things you could do with the setup and with the facade and stuff like that, so yeah, I'm gonna have to go with it.
I was also going to vote it.
Yeah.
I figured you were going to put me on the hot seat and say the Lost Boys, and I would just crush your dreams and have to go with it.
I gotta be realistic.
All right, so it is moving along into the final four. So next up, do you want to go into that next little matchup we got? Because this one's pretty interesting. There's ghosts, sort of in bowl.
I
we
was
have
just gonna say
ghosts versus Ghostface.
We do. So we have Scream, and we have our previous contender that made it 13 Ghosts. So with this one, I always tell everyone whenever we talk about Scream, I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Compared to other franchises and other slashers, it's never been my favorite. Although, seeing it as a house, I think that it could be pretty fun, in the sense that there could be a lot to work with. You could do scenes from the high school, you could do scenes from, who did Drew Barrymore play in what was her name in the show, or in the movie?
Oh, I forget. She was in
She
was in just the opening scene.
I think Casey or something like that.
Casey,
but you could
yeah.
have done an opening scene
Casey.
with her and stuff like that when you're first walking through the house, her on the phone and all that kind of stuff, with Ghostface coming in behind. There's just a lot that I feel like you could do with it. Obviously, you could do with Stu's house. You could have, even if so, you could have the opening facade be that of Stu's house and stuff like that. So I feel like with this, there's a lot that you could do. But same thing goes with 13 Ghosts. Like we had mentioned before, this would just be so easy just to have so many options of what to do as well. And it's kind of in the same realm of Ghost, like you said, Ghost and Ghostface and stuff like that.
I also forgot this is also a Matthew Lillard off. Because he is in both of these.
You're right. So either way, we'd get Matt, which would be nice. I don't know. That's a tough one. I mean, Scream does have its good attributes that I could see as it being into a house, but so does 13 Ghosts. So what were you thinking?
This is a lot tougher than I originally thought. I think the fact that 13 Ghosts lends itself to a house so perfectly gives it a little bit of an edge there for me.
Yes.
Whereas Scream, though, it is the repetitive factor.
That's true too.
It is just Ghostface running around. But because I haven't seen that ever, and again, Scream was a portion of, I believe, ripped from the Silver Screams.
That's what. Yep.
We never got to get a full on Woodsboro Ghostface house. We got sections of it, but just barely scraped the surface of it. It's hard. It's hard to pass Scream up for something else.
And I'm surprised we haven't had it before, honestly.
Yeah, it's up there. This is tough. I think Scream, just because of how popular it is, and like just the fact that Ghostface is just so iconic. Oh man, I'm gonna piss a lot of people off. Are you ready to vote?
Yeah.
I'd say 13 Ghosts.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it has a little bit more to work with than Scream, and I love Scream. I love Ghostface, but the fun part of Scream is the whodunit aspect, and that's not something that translates into a house. I mean, it's just not. It's
unless they decided to make their own storyline, and every time you go through the house, it'd be someone different at the end.
Yeah, but
that would be too
even
difficult
that.
to do, I
even
think.
when you're doing like a whodunit storyline, like you don't when you're going through a house, you don't get that.
No.
You know, so would I love to see Ghostface? Yeah. But it would be just a quintessential slasher house where I think 13 Ghosts would just be just so fun. I think it does open the door for a lot of different stuff, and it'll keep you guessing every which way versus, you know, it's like I love the Halloween houses because I love Michael.
Yeah.
I don't
mind
love
seeing Michael
Ghostface
72 times in a house.
I don't love Ghostface as much as Michael. So for me, it's kind of like when Texas Chainsaw was there. It's like, fun, but like whatever. Scream, I would be very excited if it came, just because it is that big of a deal. But in terms of like what I think would be a better house, I think 13 Ghosts would be it.
I think so too.
So
that's what I was.
13 Ghosts.
Yeah.
So we don't even have to proxy Seamus in.
Did he pick it as well? Or did he?
He had.
Go for the overall.
He didn't have Scream or 13 Ghosts in his final four.
Oh, I forgot you.
So he would have had. Gotcha. He would have had Terrifier beating Scream here. Huh. So it goes to show that there was also. We can have Seamus expand on that at some point in the future, but there's probably also some doubt there in him where it's like, okay, how fun is this really going to be? So next up is something, again, that we've sort of had, but not really. And that would be The Thing. Now, we're talking about the 1982 Thing, not the 2011 remake. The 2011 remake was a house, but we've never had the original Thing.
Because I did that house.
Yeah. So we've never had the original Kurt Russell The Thing, which is just much better.
Yeah.
We have that going against our winner from the previous round, Alien. So this is interesting. These are two like iconic films.
Yeah.
So we have get out of here. This is Ridley Scott versus John Carpenter, I believe it was. So this is a lot. Again, both very scenic settings. You have one in Antarctica in the cold, being isolated. You have in the cold, isolated, but in space with Alien.
That's true.
Alien, I think the upside for Alien is the xenomorphs. You have that villain that
I guess
doesn't necessarily get repetitive because they have so many different characteristics. Versus The Thing, which is just like, it's literally the name is The Thing.
Right.
You know, there's not really a figure to it. It takes over bodies. It's more of a host. But I am a sucker for those cold houses. Now, as far as like scenes, this would be a very like animatronic, prosthetic, heavy movie. A lot of, I'd say pretty good on the gore. It's kind of like over the top
Yeah,
gore.
the house was good in 2011 when they
Yeah.
had it. Like you said, it was like that coldness you were walking through. It was like you were walking into the Antarctic,
one outpost
like
to the
base, like
next.
the outpost, exactly. Yeah.
But this is... This one's tough. Do you have anything for these two?
I personally, like I said, I did the house before with the thing, so I know it could be translated well, but like you said, this was the 2011 version, not the original version, so I know it could be done, so I feel like it really comes down to picking something that we've partially seen already, or something, well, I mean, essentially we have partially seen some of Alien, but not enough to give it credit as for being a whole.
Yeah.
But for something that we also technically haven't seen before. But I don't have too much. I really like the thing. I really like the original movie. Honestly, I think I've only done The House in 2011. I don't even think I've seen the 2011 remake of the movie. We saw that they put it on Netflix, and I was like, I don't think I've seen this, to be honest. But I feel like this one was kind of easy for me to pick in general.
Yeah,
But
so then what are you picking then?
Probably The Thing.
You want The Thing?
Yeah, as much as, like I said, I'm not really into the whole Alien series and whatnot and that kind of stuff. And it'd be fun to see The Thing again. It's been a while since they had it, so it'd be a nice little anniversary house or something like that they could do with it.
So, I'm going Alien.
Oh, really?
I am.
You like The Thing?
I like The Thing a lot. But I just like the idea of having that xenomorph there. I think that puts it over the edge a little bit.
They're cool.
Because up to that point, these two have so many similarities.
Yeah.
Where it's the isolation, temperature, it's going to be a lot of effects. And then what's the main difference is like seeing the xenomorph versus seeing the Thing.
Yeah.
And the Thing would just be such a ridiculous figure,
This big,
creature
huge
thing.
blob thing composed
It's like
of...
Venom from Spider-Man 3. It's just like a goo monster.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm going to be pushing forward. So now
Fair enough.
I have to look to Seamus's proxy. And in the final four, Seamus has Alien.
I knew he would. Gotta
So
do me like
Alien
that.
is moving on to the final four.
Man.
So, you ready to tackle that bottom one?
Yeah, so what are we going with here? Alright, so we have The Conjuring. So with this one, would it be the original Conjuring?
The original, like Bathsheba.
Yes,
Yep.
okay. And then we have Halloween 3 that made it in to go against The Conjuring. So, anything, how do I say, religious horror, I feel like tends to be very scary on its own, because in the realness of it, it's just, it's pretty creepy, you know? So, as I mentioned before, not really a huge fan of Halloween 3 and stuff like that, but I am a fan of The Conjuring. Seeing it as The Conjuring being a house, I know we already talked about it with Halloween, I think that it could be really well done with the different characters that they have, with Bathsheba and stuff like that, with the family. They could have the house itself going through the family's house and stuff like that. I haven't seen the first Conjuring in a pretty long time, but I do get a good feel of it. Like it's, I feel like it's one of those movies that like really stuck out to you because it was just it was creepy, you know. But yeah, so I mean, there's not too much more that I have to say about Halloween 3, but what are you thinking? Because I'm trying to think a little bit more about The Conjuring now.
So The Conjuring, there's a lot, I think, that you could work with. And you could primarily just keep it in the house. I mean, you could have the whole basement scene. You could have the scene where she's, like, actually Bathsheba on top of the dresser. A big scare up there. You could have that, like, really dark. And as you walk through, it can be, like, illuminated. You could have a really quiet scene of the... was it the whatever they call it, the clap and find me game or whatever?
That's what I was going to mention, but I
So
didn't
it's
think
just-
it was from that one. Okay,
Yeah,
it
so like
is.
there's
Yeah,
one
that
where
is
she
scary.
sticks her hands out of the wardrobe. It's like
Yeah, that would
that's
be
terrifying.
a great scare,
So
honestly,
you could
too.
do a scene where it's like a long hallway,
Pitch black.
and you could have just the echoes of like I'm over here, I'm over here,
Uh-huh.
I'm over here, and then right when you get to the turn, it could just be like
Scary.
a pretty good little thing. I'm a huge, I love the Conjuring movies.
Yeah.
I'm a huge, and this is tough because you're pitting up two of my favorites, and I think one would work better as a house. And it's tough for me to like say no to the other one because I feel like both of these I've been like, I want to see both of these
Hyping up,
so bad. The only downfall with Conjuring is it's not Conjuring 2, because Conjuring 2 you could have pulled in stuff with like the nun,
right.
and the tall man with the crooked man.
The crooked man, yes.
There's a lot of cool stuff with that.
Yeah,
I think the Conjuring 2 would actually probably be a better house.
Mm-hmm.
But Conjuring 1, there is still a lot of good creepy scares. I mean, that hallway scene alone with claps would be like, oh, what? That would just fucking wreck everybody. But I do think that there's a great like basement scene scare. You could do something outdoorsy with like the whole tree with the hangings.
That would be spooky too.
There's a lot there. You could have like that could be your facade.
Right.
It's like a big fake tree that you're walking under.
Yeah.
And you could do the sound effects of like nooses dropping and like bodies hitting and stuff like that.
Or the tree branches kind of creaking with the noose. Yep.
Walking up to the house. So, what are you gonna be voting towards?
Well, this one was pretty easy for me, so I'm gonna have to go with The Conjuring.
Okay, so Seamus proxied in Halloween 3.
Gotcha.
In the final four. Now, I've been a huge advocate for Conjuring and Halloween 3. I asked Mike Aiello and the Halloween Horror Nights crew at Spooky Empire
that was your big break.
when Halloween 3 was coming. So
what a nice guy too.
You can't say that I haven't fought for this thing.
Yeah.
But I think The Conjuring would be a just terrifying house. And as much as I want to see Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, I have to say to myself that this bracket in no way dictates if it will ever come there. So me saying The Conjuring moves forward does not hurt its chances. Nobody's going to listen to it anyway. I'm going to vote for The Conjuring as well.
I'm shocked.
Yeah,
I really am. I know how much you like Halloween 3.
I love Halloween 3.
You do like the Conjuring franchise.
I love both of these so much. It's strictly like horror versus fun. I think The Conjuring, just the scares in it alone. There might not be as many as normal like houses.
Right.
But I think the ones that you can pull from it would just be devastating.
Yeah. Like memorable.
Yeah. So as much as I'd love to go to the Silver Shamrock factory, I'm going to have to put that The Conjuring ahead of it, and we can go visit Bathsheba instead.
Yeah.
So, that brings us up to the top. Is this one mine now? Did you just do the last one?
Did you do The Conjuring? Yeah, I just did The Conjuring Halloween 3. Yeah.
So this brings us to our final four. So up top, we have It versus 13 Ghosts. Now, this is the part of the bracket where it's like, we've already talked about every single house at least once.
Right.
So we don't necessarily have to dive in, like super in depth. Now, I do feel like both of these have a similar, or would have a similar house feel. There's, one main entity. There's a lot of different little steps to get there. I mean, taking place in a house for the most part.
Yep.
Unless it like branches out and does like really obscure scenes.
Right.
Having Pennywise as like the ringleader or whatever would be really cool. I don't know. I'm kind of split on this one right now. This is a tough one.
It is tough.
And I think it's so tough because of how well 13 Ghosts like lends itself. We talked about that previously. Like the movie is just perfect for a house.
Yeah.
Versus taking a trip to Derry, Maine and scraping out a house. But I think I'm comfortable with my vote. Are you ready to vote on this one? Unless you have any other like discussion points for these two.
I mean, so going back to It, I know we just have It as the premise, and it would probably be the 2017 version. Maybe, I think I do have my vote. Maybe if it was the original It, with the original Tim Curry, Pennywise, I think that they could maybe do a little bit more with that. I mean, maybe it might be the same, but I feel like that would just draw the appeal to me a little bit more. I love that classic Pennywise. But yeah, I think I have my vote. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go?
Why don't you go first?
I think I'm gonna have to go with 13 Ghosts.
13 Ghosts, huh? All right. Well, Seamus's proxy was It.
Yeah? Huh.
So that puts me in a pretty sticky situation. I am also going to vote It.
No.
Yep, I think that's the end of the Cinderella run for 13
Yeah.
Ghosts. They put up a good fight, but I think, I mean, the classic nature of Pennywise, there's just as many possibilities in It as 13 Ghosts.
There is. I wouldn't be upset with either of them. This one was really hard, honestly.
And it's almost like, I mean, like, all the fears that It is
Right.
kind of fit as the ghosts. Like, it won't be as just Pennywise. Like, as we talked with Scream, like,
Yeah.
It's not like Ghostface takes different forms. Pennywise takes different forms while still being Pennywise. So you could have Pennywise, and then you can have a form of him, and then you can have Pennywise, and then a form of him. So it can break it up, the monotony a little bit from that. So I'm going to have to push it into the championship round.
All right. That's... Man. I don't know. 13 Ghosts has a special place in my heart, I guess.
I had a good run. It took out
It
Scream
did have a
and
good
Terrifier.
run. I know. People are going to be real upset. The people want it. All right, so what are the next one we have here? So we have The Conjuring and Alien, yes?
Yep.
So I feel like this one's pretty easy for me, again, just because I mentioned it before. I know we already talked about both these houses before. The Conjuring would just be so scary in the sense of the memorable scares that could be in that house and stuff like that. But with Alien, it would be that, like, legit sci-fi, like you said, the Nostromo setting and whatnot and stuff like that. So it could be really cool as well, but I think I got my vote on this one, too. I'm going to have to go with The Conjuring.
The Conjuring, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Seamus proxied in Alien.
Man.
So now... Man, this comes down to me. Do I
Down to
choose
you.
Conjuring to take out Season of the Witch for nothing? Or do I
That's what I'm saying.
push it into the championship round? Now, I guess the last little weigh-in of pros and cons. The setting of Alien probably gives it... I think they're both pretty neutral on setting. I think they're both, you have the spaceship, and then The Conjuring, you have the house. I think the villain aspect, the main villain of that house, Alien gets the nudge, because Bathsheba's just like the possessed mother.
That's true.
As far as scares, I think The Conjuring gets the nudge. I think there's more...
It's kind of why I was leaning more towards it.
I think there's more variety in scares. Man, that's tough. I'm going to push through The Conjuring.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank God.
I think both these obviously would make fantastic houses. Now, I think The Conjuring has a little bit, like I said, a little weaker of a quote-unquote villain. But I think there's more fun options to play with versus... Xenomorph coming out of here, Facesucker coming out of here, Xenomorph over here, Facesucker over here. It breaks it up a little bit. Now I kind of see why they did AVP, because like you could mix in Predator a little bit and have some fun with that. But I'm gonna push through The Conjuring. So that brings us to our championship round.
The championship
which is
round.
It versus Conjuring. Tough.
That's a tough one.
This is tough, and I will tell you right now. Seamus proxied in It to win the entire thing.
The entire thing, out of all these, he picked It.
He picked It as winning.
Huh.
So, all it needs is one more vote to be champion. So, It versus Conjuring, huh? This is tough. No, I think these are just so similar, though. I mean, a lot of it's house-related. These are essentially entities, and I think there's similar. I think the scares we've talked about with The Conjuring can be found in It.
Yeah.
I think the clapping can be still done with a balloon popping.
Yeah.
That eerie entrance to the house versus coming under the hanging tree.
Yeah.
It could be the Georgie scene, where it is calling to you from the sewers. So I think
that would be scary.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of similarities between these two, even though they are vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have any other?
This one is really tough, honestly, because I feel like it comes down to not the iconicness of it, but I feel like people, if they were to see it to be on a lineup and to be as a house, they would be like, wow, like, oh my god, like
It's
that's gonna be a big deal. Don't get me wrong, The Conjuring has a pretty big following as well. A lot of people like the Conjuring franchise and all that kind of stuff, but it is just so notably known from people who don't even like horror that much, you know what I mean? Like people who don't watch scary movies that often and stuff
they
like
know
that
what
still
it
know
is.
what it is and still know about Pennywise the Clown and all that kind of stuff. So this is a tough one. Should I vote first or do you want to vote first?
You can vote.
I mean, the one I wanted for overall was already out of it, The Lost Boys. I mean, they lost pretty early on, but shoot, I mean, and it's just The Lost Boys, 13 Ghosts. So at this point, I'm really going for overall as a house that I would like to see.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm going to have to go with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm also going to go it. So
Yeah?
it is the champion.
Okay.
Which, upon looking at the bracket, I
Yeah.
can't say maybe people are too surprised.
Right.
But I think some surprising stuff that did happen,
Mm-hmm.
just to recap, I think Scream not even making it past one matchup.
Yeah.
13 Ghosts making it to the final four.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big one. Halloween 3 not making it to the final four on this podcast is pretty
What can I tell you?
ridiculous. The Thing didn't even get out of the
We
gate.
didn't even do anything with the Thing. You're right. I forgot.
The Thing didn't go nowhere.
You're right.
This was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think, obviously looking back, you're like, oh, of course it's going to win. But when you listen to this episode,
Yeah.
it's like, wow, a lot of stuff, a lot of surprises happened there.
And that's what I didn't want people to think either. They're going to be like, oh, they chose it overall because they've been talking about it and stuff. But no, like, you can't tell me, like, it would not make a good house. And that's why people have wanted it for so long. Because we know how it, like...
It's such an incredibly strong property.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Well, before we sign off, we should do our horror watches of the week. So you've been watching a lot of stuff. I'll let you talk a little bit first because I need to think what I have watched, because really I've just been a dirtbag and watching Love is Blind. Yeah. Come at me. At me.
I'm just as bad. It's okay. I get into the trash TV soon. Never thought you'd be the one to like it, but you like it.
I love Love is Blind. It's kind of horrific.
Oh god.
That could count as my
terrible.
horror watch of the week.
That's a tough one. I feel like I've been watching so many miscellaneous B-horror movies that I've been finding on Tubi lately, which, as you guys know from the past couple episodes I've been on recently, that's right up my alley. What did I watch this week? So I've seen this one before, but today I was doing a little bit of writing for another writing job that I have as well. But Tales of Halloween. So they have it on Tubi, used to be on Netflix for a while. It's an anthology series, really, really cool. I love anthology series. I think they're really fun. I love the whole aspect of different little shorts being combined into one movie with one, like, ultimate theme, which I think is really fun. So if you haven't seen Tales of Halloween, I highly recommend you go watch it. A couple of the episodes are kind of corny, but corny, I feel like, in the best way possible. They're really original, really creative with their episodes. All around kind of a fun but still spooky movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, and I honestly don't think I've watched anything horror this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just let you run on that segment. That's your segment this week.
Cool.
Well, that wraps it up. We do not have anything planned yet for next week, but we have a lot of stuff that we have to start planning for. In May, it is our 3-year anniversary, which means we have to plan a giant episode because that is also 3-year anniversary, but it is also 100 days until Halloween Horror Nights. So we are inching closer and closer by the day. If you are listening to this on Friday or Saturday morning, make sure you pull up the info for HHN 365. They are hosting a Halloween Horror Nights trivia at Half Barrel Project. get there early. All the information as directions and time are on their socials. It is a small location. So whatever their start time is, get there like an hour or an hour and a half beforehand, grab some beers, and just kind of camp your spot out, because it is a Saturday on iDrive during spring break. And it is a small location. Great location. We pick up most of our beers from them. I was just going to say that, yeah. But it is small, so be sure to check that out. We will probably be there. So if you want to see the team that's going to get a lot of wrong answers that host a podcast, just look for us. We will be there. No, they run a really good trivia. Their questions are pretty in depth.
I'm excited. I want to see how I would do.
It's pretty fun. But until next time, this is Nick.
This is Jamie.
And Seamus is in Ireland. Happy hunts.
It's cursed. It's got a death curse.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare.
And again, I would just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out. Spotify, Facebook. Again, that is Vampire Stepdad.